everyone. I'm Manny Varela, Business Relationship Manager of the DevOps Institute. Thank you for attending the ITSM for DevOps Ask the Author webinar. Our presenters today are Donna Nap, author of the ITSM for DevOps drill down course, and Jayne Groll, CEO of DevOps Institute. After completing the DevOps Foundation certification, the DOI drill downs are a series of plug-and-play non-certification courses that further advance a learner's knowledge of specific DevOps concentrations. Over the next year, DevOps Institute will release new drill downs as relevant new topics are identified. We've planned for some time at the end of the presentation for questions, so please use the questions dialog box to submit your inquiries. There is also a PDF of this presentation that can be downloaded in the handout window of your control panel. To commence today's session and to better familiarize Donna and Jayne with today's audience, I have a few polling questions that I'd like to offer. Your participation is greatly appreciated. All right, so here we go with the first question. How would you describe your current role? And I'll give you about 20 seconds or so to answer the questions. ITSM process owner or manager, DevOps manager or team leader, Agile or Lean coach, senior management, or other. Please chat your answer. And we'll end it in 3, 2, 1. Closing that poll. And let's share what we found. So Donna and Jayne, looks like quite a bit of process owners or managers, some Agile Lean coaches, senior management, and quite a few others. So we'll have to check in the chat box for what those are. And we'll move on to the next one. So, how familiar are you with IT service management or ITIL? Very familiar, somewhat familiar, just learning about ITSM, have never heard of it, or other? And we will close out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it looks like very familiar with ITSM service management. Somewhat familiar or close second. Great. Let's move on to the next. In the context of process design and improvement, to what extent are you using Agile and Lean methods? The majority of projects, some projects, just getting started, not using, and not sure. And we'll close it out here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it looks like top 3 there, pretty evenly matched. Majority of projects, some projects just getting started. Great. And we have one more to share. How mature is your organization's DevOps adoption? Haven't started, preparing to get started, underway, mature and improving. And we'll close out the last polling question in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it looks quite a bit, 50%, better than 50% are underway. So that's good to hear. Good to see. Haven't started yet, preparing to get started, and mature and improving. So great. Thank you very much for your participation there. And great. All right. So thank you all for your answers. And with that, let's begin the presentation. Donna Nap, how are you this morning?
I'm great. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for participating today. Manny, I want to verify you're seeing my screen. Yes?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay. All right. And so let's go ahead and get going. So I'm very excited about this course. And what I'm going to do is spend a little bit of time talking about some of the concepts that we cover in the course, like the promise and the reality of DevOps, the relationship between ITSM and DevOps, and why it's so important to adapt IT service management in support of DevOps. And then in the kind of back half of the presentation, we'll talk about the course itself and leave plenty of time for questions, which for me and for Jayne Groll, who's going to participate in the Q&A with me, is always actually our favorite part. So this is a DevOps Institute course, and I'm very excited by everything that DevOps Institute is doing. It's really designed to facilitate community, to facilitate learning, to make sure that these evolving DevOps practices are always coming forward and making that information available to people in the form of quality education and training. And this is, the first of many great courses being offered by DOI. A little bit about me. I worked in the IT industry for over 25 years. I actually was a change manager at one point in my career. I was a service desk manager at one point in my career. I read a quote by someone from Google recently that said, if you're not at least a little embarrassed by the first release of your product, you're not progressing. And I kind of feel that way about my days as a change manager. Like now that I understand DevOps and kind of understand more about Agile and Lean principles, I have moments where I'm a little bit embarrassed by some of my early change management processes. But when you know better, you do better. And that's really what this particular course is all about. I am an author. I've published three texts. One is the ITSM Process Design Guide, which I'm very proud to say is the foundation for the Certified Process Design Engineer certification. And then 2 books dedicated to Service Desk, a guide to Service Desk concepts and customer service skills for the Service Desk professional. I'm currently the Curriculum Development Manager for ITSM Academy. We provide IT service management and DevOps related education. And, I like to say as Curriculum Development Manager, my job is, twofold. It's to maintain the quality of our materials, but it's also just to constantly be learning new things and understanding what's happening in the industry so we can add those new opportunities to our portfolio. So as a lifelong learner, that it's like a perfect job for me because I am always getting to learn new things. So let's talk about ITSM for DevOps. And let's begin with what I like to refer to as the moment of DevOps, and that is the promise. That is DevOps. And it's a pretty audacious promise. Historically, I was a consultant for a lot of years, so we used to say things like you can have things, cheap or fast or good. Pick 2 of those, you can't have all of them. And really the promise of DevOps is that we strike this incredible balance between improving speed and agility and stability and quality. There's not an or statement in there that we achieve all of that. And we achieve the overall productivity of our organization. So, through the introduction of things like Agile and Lean practices, we enable people to work much more efficiently and effectively. So it's really the practices are quite interesting, and how organizations are approaching these practices are really giving them some very tremendous results. And if you haven't ever seen the State of DevOps report, just Google it. You'll see some of the statistics, the amazing results that organizations are achieving by introducing DevOps practices. But now here's the reality
Donna,
of DevOps. Yes?
I'm
Yes,
sorry.
Jayne?
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but we're not seeing the slide move forward. There we go. Thanks.
Okay. So now here's the reality of DevOps. For a lot of organizations, this is a massive transformation from an organization that is a traditional IT organization where you're doing, you know, quarterly or semi-annual or annual releases, and you've got these firmly entrenched silos in your organization. Because you're bundling so many changes together into releases, those releases are very high risk. You know, I was a service desk manager, so, you know, I remember those days of the phone ringing off the hook for, you know, weeks and days after, you know, we released something new. For some organizations, there's a very risk-averse culture in place. You know, I've been in organizations where there's actually signs on the wall that say failure is not an option. And when you think about, you know, the spirit of DevOps and even of Agile development, where we're being challenged to constantly experiment and learn, that's a challenging culture to operate in. There's very much a focus on things like cost reduction and resource utilization, capacity type metrics. And because there's very, very siloed organizations, there's a lot of throwing over the wall happening, right? Now, on the far end of the spectrum, when you hear about DevOps and you hear about the organizations that are leading, the organizations that were the earliest adopters of DevOps, the organizations that are the highest performing when it comes to DevOps, these organizations have really dramatically looked dramatically different. So, and in many cases, their architectures look very different. So they've maybe, you know, moved to microservices. If nothing else, they've decoupled their architecture so they can, you know, produce very, very small releases. We're talking about autonomous, self-organizing, product-oriented teams where they've broken down those silos and they have everything that they need in order to complete all of the tasks across the value stream. Because they've so highly automated it, everything, releases are now, you know, a non-event. They're releasing during normal business hours. They're releasing, you know, from many to hundreds of times a day. So they've really very much, you know, shifted left all of their core activities. They've learned how to fail successfully. They've learned the value of failing. And, you know, one of the core metrics that is very, very different about these organizations, not to say things like cost and capacity aren't still important, but they really look at time. So they're looking at things like lead time and cycle time, and always looking at how long it is taking us to do things and how we can improve or reduce how long it's taking us to do things. And they very much understand the idea that, you know, even though we might not deploy something today, if the business said they wanted something, we would be able to deploy it today. So these are, you know, two vastly different types of organizations. And in between all of that, there's all kinds of ground to cover, right? It takes organizations, you know, anywhere from 18 months to multiple years to get through this transformation. And that's who this course is for. This course is for the enterprises in particular who are undergoing this transformation and who are in this middle ground trying to figure out, from an IT service management standpoint specifically, what does this look like? And how can we ensure that our ITM processes are contributing to our ability to quickly deliver value to the business, to quickly achieve the promise of DevOps to the benefit of the business. Now, there's all, I'm sure you've seen the articles kind of for years now where, organizations are saying DevOps represents the death of IT service management. You see, we don't need no stinking processes. And the reality is that DevOps kind of emerged outside of traditional IT service management. And some people even say it's because of IT service management, because IT service management was so heavy-handed, because in some organizations, the processes are overly bureaucratic, overly controlling. These practices began to emerge. And it's also the reality that traditional IT service management came up in a time when waterfall was the norm. And so some of its practices reflect that fact, acknowledge that fact, that waterfall was the norm. But the reality is it is ITSM and DevOps and not ITSM or DevOps. But, and here's a big but, IT service management has to evolve. Right? So how do we do that? Well, we do the same thing that the, individuals who were the early adopters with DevOps did. Let's apply, agile practices. Let's apply lean practices. Now, and now let's use DevOps practices and apply the core principles represented by those frameworks and approaches, and use them to modernize IT service management. And that's really very much what we need to do. We need to accelerate IT service management. We need to modernize it. We need to automate it wherever we possibly can, and make sure that ITSM and DevOps together are truly delivering on that promise, truly delivering business benefits. The reality is organizations who are, and I'm using air quotes here, doing DevOps are doing IT service management, right? They're handling changes. They're handling incidents, they're handling problems, they need to capture knowledge. They're just not calling it that, right? They're not calling it IT service management, and they don't necessarily understand all the good work that's been done in terms of being able to have a repeatable set of activities that let you do things like manage changes and handle incidents. So ITSM can really bring a lot of value to DevOps by bringing forward those things that the things that ITSM knows how to do well, and by enabling DevOps to not have to reinvent the wheel, solving problems that ITSM has already solved. So the what and the why of IT service management hasn't changed. Change management's job, whether you're calling it change management or not, if you're making changes in an IT organization today, the role of that set of activities is to maximize value to your customers, and to make sure that you're optimizing the risk associated with making that change. There's no one in the DevOps community who's going to argue with that as the what and the why of a process like change management. If you're handling an incident, what we need to do is restore service as quickly as possible and minimize the impact to the business of that incident. Again, and do that in the most resource-effective way possible. Again, if you really talk to people, there's no argument about the what and the why. It's really the how of IT service management that has to change. Again, in some organizations, we've seen this kind of heavy-handed approach taken with IT service management, and we need to change that. So DevOps introduces to our organizations new ways of thinking and new ways of working, and that's really the framework for this new course. We talk about what these new ways of thinking are, and really an aim of this course is to make sure that people undergo that, if they haven't already. I'm not suggesting some folks aren't going to come into class having already gone through this change in mindset, but let's change the mindset so that people understand how DevOps is different, and how we need to think differently about IT service management in the context of DevOps and in the context of things like Agile and Lean. And DevOps also introduces new ways of working, new practices. So what this course does is really start with saying, all right, why is IT service management viewed as a constraint? What are the problems that we need to solve there? And then how can we approach, what changes can we make to our IT service management processes? How can we adapt our IT service management processes in order to solve that problem, right? In order to alleviate that perception that ITSM is a constraint. And we introduce a lot of real world techniques that are being used in organizations today in order to adapt and automate their IT service management processes. This project has been very fun for me because it's been just kind of a good old-fashioned research project to go out and look at and talk to organizations and understand what they are doing, what practices they've put in place, how they're doing things. And it's also exciting to me because there's no one right way of doing things. You know, how organizations are approaching automating change management activities are different. And that's okay. It's one of the things that's both really interesting to me and one of the things that's scary for a lot of us when it comes to things like DevOps. There's no definitive body of knowledge here. There's a collective body of knowledge, and that's really, I think, what DOI is striving to do, is pull out and constantly update that collective body of knowledge in terms of how organizations are approaching things. So we talk about key IT service management processes, but notice the word key there. So we're not talking about all of the processes that are introduced by frameworks like ITIL or COBIT. We're talking about, you know, those core processes that really impact DevOps: change, release, config management, incident, problem, knowledge management. And certainly we talk about the impact of all of these changes on other processes. And then we also, because there's so much culture change, anytime you're changing processes, you're changing culture. We talk about handling the associated culture change, but we don't really reinvent the wheel here. There's a lot of awesome classes out there that talk about organizational change management, including courses like DevOps Leader and DevOps Foundation. We really kind of try to look at it in a slightly different way, by talking about how to, you know, have a, you know, principled conversation about why these processes need to change and how to go about, you know, negotiating those changes within your organizations. So, you know, why is ITSM viewed as a constraint? How can we solve that? What, you know, what kind of methods and techniques can we use? And there's options there, right? There's different approaches that an organization can take, and we try to present all of those that we've discovered up until now. And then how to overcome the challenges. We know that there's going to be challenges. So what do we do, right? How do we overcome those challenges? And then a big thing that we aim to do with this course is help people articulate what the value is to the business, most importantly, and to DevOps practitioners, right? What's the value in bringing IT service management and DevOps together, and in continuously improving ITSM in support of DevOps? So let's talk about the course itself. So Jayne?
Thanks, Donna. That was awesome. So hi, everyone. This is Jayne Groll. I'm CEO of the DevOps Institute, and I'm really excited to be able to talk to you a little bit about DOI's new series of drill down courses. So we know that, or you may or may not know, over the past couple of years, DevOps Institute has introduced a very competency-based certification series. So we have DevOps Foundation, of course, which is a broad view certification of exposure to a lot of different DevOps practices and principles. And then for those that are going to try to grow their competencies, we've introduced several DevOps Practitioner Series courses, including DevOps Leader, DevOps Test Engineering, Continuous Delivery Architecture, and soon DevSecOps. And so those are certification based, and of course they cover a wide variety of, again, practices and principles. But we also know that the learning public, the continuous learning community really craves knowledge and training about very, very specific DevOps topics, like how to adapt your IT service management practices to DevOps. We also introduced recently a value stream mapping for DevOps, and we have several more titles for next year. So as the name implies, these courses, they're not certifications, are really meant for the continuous learner, whether you're going to go on to a certification or you're not going to go on to a certification, but you have a organizational or personal interest in a particular topic. These courses drill down into very prescriptive and very practical how-tos on these particular topics. So in the case of IT service management for DevOps, as Donna implied, it's very much about why you should adapt your IT service management practices like change management to a DevOps approach, but also how to do it. And so that's, I think, part of the beauty of being able to drill down into these topics, that they become a lot less of the what and a lot more of the how. They're much more experiential than theoretical, right? They're intended for a very broad-based audience, so there is no prerequisite to attend these courses. Our partners will be delivering it as bundles to DevOps Foundation, bundles to DevOps practitioners, or standalones, depending on the need of their market and the need of their customers. And they will be delivered by our very extensive 100 plus registered education partners around the world. So this particular course, ITSM for DevOps, is very near and dear to my heart. Many of you know I come from the service management training space. Donna and I have worked together for a long time, and we love doing these presentations together. But more importantly, you know, we both realized that while there's a lot of debate, you know, whether you're on Twitter or whether you're looking at blogs about life for IT service management after DevOps, we also know and have seen, and Donna's done extensive research on how organizations are adapting. There is no doubt that organizations need to conform change management, for example, to a DevOps approach. It's the number one question I get asked, Donna gets asked, others in the space get asked in terms of how do we align all of our efforts and investments in ITIL and IT service management with our ongoing transformations towards a DevOps approach. And so this course in particular really does look at how to accelerate that. As Donna said, you know, IT service management traditionally was built for waterfall, right? The last time ITIL was updated, waterfall was still very much the norm. Now we kind of progress forward where agile software development and agile service management are more the norm. And how do we just go faster, right? How do we look at things like minimum viable process? Really helping on the ITSM side, how do we adapt a new way of thinking? How do we go from command and control to much more of an agile and lean approach so that we can support DevOps? And then, you know, the last bullet I'm particularly enamored with, and it's really practicing and mastering those continuous improvement methods and techniques, very specifically to key processes like incident management, change management, and release management. You know, and of course, we know that release management and continuous delivery have very, very strong relationships there. You know, as I said, these courses are really intend to be plug and plays. So our partners are encouraged to either bundle them. So if you were, for example, taking DevOps Foundation and you or your organization had a particular interest in IT service management for DevOps, this would be a great package. They can be taught alone, they can be packaged with our DevOps practitioner series, and our partners have the full authority to be able to package them as they see their customers' needs and meet those. Next slide, please. So why is this course important? While there's a lot of content available online about why ITSM and DevOps need to be aligned, about why Agile, Lean, ITSM and DevOps need to be aligned. While there's some debate and there's certainly some insight, there's really not training. And so this course is intended to be very broad-based. So the intent is that you would have developers and operations and security and business people all sitting together, whether virtually or in the same room, specifically talking about how do we cross the bridge between our investments in agile software development, our investments in IT service management, our investments in automation, and our investments in DevOps. So very, very excited about the fact that there is actually now going to be educational opportunities without the pressure of certification, truthfully, to be able to work through how is this going to work in our organization. We know that organizations with very mature IT service management programs are struggling, right? They're struggling to really maximize the investments, and some of which institutionalize processes that they've been, working towards over the last, say, 5 to 10 years, and now being, instructed to do it differently. And certainly there is a little bit of a territorial approach to that. I always say in IT, we love our frameworks more than any other unit in the business. And so part of this is really trying to find that common ground. And as Donna said, more importantly, that common mindset, right? So that everybody's in it together, and that the use of automation and the use of some of the DevOps practices and principles can be used to be able to modernize and accelerate IT service management. And, at the end of the day, everything that we're talking about in DevOps, whether it's on the automation side, the cultural side, or the alignment of the frameworks, is about helping people think a new way. So is this course right for you? Well, anyone that's interested in modernizing IT service management processes in support of DevOps or digital transformation, again, from my own personal observation, I go to a lot of conferences, I talk to a lot of people. Change management in particular, how do we support this post-production? So what happens after continuous deployment or continuous delivery? And how do we align our release practices with the automated approach of continuous delivery? Really top of mind. So if that's a challenge for you or your organization, if you're an IT service management process engineer, if you're a continuous delivery architect, if you're a business stakeholder, certainly if you're on the management side, this course is really for you. Because as I've said, it is a much more prescriptive approach that is less about the why and the what as it is about the how. Right? If you're a transformation leader, you're an Agile coach, you're a DevOps coach, you're an ITSM coach, you're an ITIL expert, or someone who has taken ITIL Foundation, certainly these are for you as well. And then finally, we know that the consultancies in DevOps and IT service management and automation consultants, tool providers, really need to align their efforts as well so that it is a continuous value stream. Certainly should be interested in this course as well. So I'm really proud to speak to this slide in particular because I've known Donna Nap for a very, very long time. Donna has had really an extensive career in IT service management as a practitioner, as a consultant, as a trainer, and most recently as a curriculum development manager. So she's got an enormous amount of experience in IT service management, and she and I have really followed this journey together over the last 10 years, but she's got much more than that. She's spent a lot of time researching DevOps core concepts and thinking and building and aligning. How do we marry what we know about IT service management to what's emerging in DevOps? She's done extensive research. As she said, one of the cool parts about building a course like this was really being able to take it as a research project to figure out what are high-performing organizations doing that are adapting and automating their IT service management processes in support of DevOps. Taking the same approach, by the way, that developers and infrastructure and security are trying to take in relationship to DevOps as well. And then recognizing that it's not a one-size-fits-all. In IT service management for many years, you know, we've put forth the mantra, adopt and adapt. And sometimes frameworks like ITIL can become a little religious, where it's, you know, which book, which chapter, and which verse do we need to do to build our change management. And this course in particular, in addition to being able to prescribe some really tangible ideas for taking some of the processes and accelerating and modernizing them, there's also a recognition that this is not a one-size-fits-all. How one organization adapts its change management and another organization adapts it, it's okay to be different. And it is one of the reasons why DOI chose not to add a certification to the drill down courses, to be able to embrace the fact that there are commonalities, but there are also differences between them, and to encourage learners to be able to explore ways to adapt those processes in support of their own needs and their own programs. So the course will be available to our partners in January of 2018. And so we are in the process of building and implementing our model for all of the drill down courses. As I mentioned, we've already introduced value stream mapping for DevOps. IT service management for DevOps is second in the series. We've got a couple of more in the pipeline for Q1 of 2018 as well. So our partners will be able to sell, market, promote, and schedule these classes starting in early 2018. And so find your global registered education partner. As I said, I think right now we're at 108 partners. We're in 29 countries. Please go to www.devopsinstitute.com to find a registered education partner near you if you are not already working with one.
So Jayne, the typo on that slide just goes to show you how in complete denial I am that 2018 is just around the corner. Like, how are we here? Like, how is that possible?
Donna, you know, I saw that, I thought the same thing. It's like, really, it is January of 2017, right? Because we're in just total denial that another year has passed. It's just, it is remarkable. But I will tell you, I mean, you know, to be fair, it's been a really exciting year. And, you know, I say to everybody, it is a great time to be in IT. It's going way too fast. So the accelerating part, Donna, I'm blaming this all on you for using the word accelerating. We're accelerating years, but it is true. Okay, just to wrap up, again, looking at DevOps a certification scheme. And again, each of the drill down courses, in particular ITSM for DevOps, really can be bundled with any one of our certification courses. DevOps Foundation is the prerequisite for most of our practitioner competencies, including DevOps Test Engineer, Continuous Delivery Architect, DevSecOps Engineering, and DevOps Leader. And next year, here's a preview, Site Reliability Engineering. And then our other service management certifications, Agile Service Manager and Agile Process Owner, do not have DevOps Foundation as a prerequisite. And again, each of these drill down courses can be bundled. If you want to learn more about that, please go to www.devopsinstitute.com and look at our courses. And there's an ebook that you can download that would provide you with much more information. Okay, Donna, I think we're up to the funnest part of this session, huh?
Yes, absolutely. We like this part.
Yeah. So Manny,
you're going to help us out?
Yes, hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. We got a couple questions, and please, if you have additional questions, enter it into the questions window from your control panel. So we'll start with our first question. How will it be with the ITIL 2018 coming up, trying to bring changes to adapt Agile and DevOps ways in ITIL? So I guess based on the new ITIL 2018 update that's coming, how are we going to bring these changes to adapt Agile and DevOps?
So Donna, if you don't mind, let me go first and then I'll pass it to you. So you know, as some of you or all of you know, Axos has announced that they are undertaking an update to ITIL with the expectation that it would be available late 2018 into 2019. We don't have a lot of information about what that's going to look like. We do know the intent is to be able to align some of the ITIL guidance and to align it with Agile or DevOps or Lean, but we really don't know specifically the practices. You know, that's a long time to wait to figure out how to move forward with your DevOps programs. You know, from day one, when DevOps crossed the chasm into the enterprise space, I mean, 2 years ago, we were talking about whether DevOps would actually work in the enterprise. I think that question's been asked and answered. But, you know, organizations are seeking knowledge about how do we bring these two together. I said, I spend a lot of time at conferences. Once in a blue moon, I get to teach a class. And I would tell you the number one question I get asked is, how are we going to do this with our existing change management process? So while we very much respect the fact that the intellectual property owners of ITIL are undertaking an initiative to bring it more into a modern age, we don't know how this will align, but we also know that from our research in the market, we can't wait. Donna, do you want to add to that?
I'm just going to agree with you. You know, the reality is that organizations have for several years now been adapting their IT service management processes as their DevOps initiatives matured. You know, there are enterprises, and that's really who this class is oriented to, enterprises that are already doing this really well. And so what this course does is help you understand kind of the current state of where things are. So I agree with Jayne that it's, you know, we're in the throes of it, and it's evolving, and it's evolving fast. And our attempt is to give you a look at, you know, kind of where things are now and how you can benefit from organizations that have already been there, done that. I think the other thing I would say is that, you know, ITIL gave us a sneak peek into what they're calling ITIL X with ITIL Practitioner, the ITIL Practitioner guidance publication that came out last year. It really aimed to introduce the principles, the guiding principles that are derived from things like Agile and Lean and DevOps. So I would just say that we're already seeing a little bit of how the guidance is going to evolve. But beyond that, like Jayne said, we don't know what it's going to look like. You know, we're participating in that research program along with everybody else. But it's a long way off, and there's organizations here and now that are trying to figure out what to do.
And if you don't mind, I'm going to throw one more thing in. As I mentioned it before, I think one of the risks that we see in IT particular, because we love our frameworks, is that we do tend to take a little bit of a religious approach, right? Which is we're waiting for the next version to come out to tell us what to do. And the reality is, as Donna said, you know, the first job here is to change the way people think. And so if in the meantime, while the next version of ITIL is being authored, and again, I know some of the authors, they're all really talented, very insightful thought leaders, but if in the meantime we're teaching people how to think so that when the books do come out, there's good guidance that's being sought, but some of the religious aspects of it, meaning it you know, we don't need someone to tell us what to do, we want somebody to supplement what we're doing. I think then that's a very, very good use of time.
Right. And those authors don't know your organization. So the whole notion behind, you know, adopt and adapt, the adapt part says, okay, learn everything you can learn about what's going on here, and then adapt it to your organization's circumstances and needs and goals. So you're never going to find in a definitive publication the answer to your specific question. It's why people get frustrated with ITIL sometimes, is because they want ITIL to answer kind of exactly the problem that they're trying to solve right now. What it can do, what any form of guidance can do is help you develop the mindset and help you understand what the best practices are. But from there, your mission in life is to then adapt all of that to the needs of your specific organization. So, and to your organization's circumstances as they exist, you know, now, not a year from now.
Great, fantastic. Thank you, Jayne and Donna, for that answer. It was definitely informative. And I've got another question here. In terms of the material contained within ITSM for DevOps, does it mirror or is it duplicated in any way in any of the other certification courses like DOL or CDA or even CPDE?
No. And I'm not going to tell you there's not nods to other courses, but it very intentionally was developed with the idea that we're not going to replicate a lot of what's in other courses. In fact, you know, I meant to say this during my first little section. It assumes coming in that you have familiarity with ITSM and DevOps. We actually spend very little time in the very front of the class kind of framing out the conversation in terms of what ITSM is and what DevOps is. But we don't really spend a lot of time, you know, if you don't understand what IT service management is or what DevOps is coming into this class, then you might struggle a little bit, right? Because it assumes the familiarity. So it really has been developed to intentionally not be redundant with those courses. And the other thing, you know, I want to emphasize again is that this course is really about how. So some of the other courses talk about the what's and the whys. And so while we, again, kind of tend to just frame those things out, this is very much about the how. It's very experiential. It's very intended to help people articulate, you know, what's the problem we need to solve here? Why is ITSM viewed as such a constraint? What are our options in terms of how we can go about solving that problem? And how do we articulate the value associated with making those changes? Sorry, Jayne, interrupted you.
No, that's fine. I was interrupting you. And I really want to also make it clear that this is not repetitive to Certified Agile Service Manager, CASM, or CAPO, Certified Agile Process Owner. Those courses are very much about the approach to using Agile practices and principles for designing and engineering and managing and owning process. But they're not prescriptive in terms of specific processes, right? So CASM is a great course, and it's been delivered hundreds of times throughout the world with, you know, with very, very good reviews, because it is a different approach, a modern approach to creating agile processes. You know, concepts like minimum viable process and just enough process, and really being able to look at how do you scale your processes to meet a more modern approach. ITSM for DevOps is more specific and, you know, as Donna said, very experiential, and it will speak to how do you adapt change management, right? So, or, you know, or several other processes. So they're not meant to be duplicative at all. In fact, they could be a great bundle.
Great. Thank you for the answers. And got another one here. One of the challenges our clients ask is how is it that ITSM evolves purely in a world of ops without any interference in dev?
Oh, can I answer this one, Donna?
Sure, go ahead.
Because, you know, this is one of my favorite questions. And I'll let Donna answer in a second, but because I get asked this question a lot. So ITIL is a great framework, right? And for the last, you know, 15 years, I've spent a lot of my time really promoting the benefits of IT service management, and particularly the evolution of the ITIL framework. But ITIL made one mistake, and it's really one little mistake that actually spawned a disconnect between operations folks and developers. And that's that in the service design book, there is a reference that talks about software development lifecycle approaches. And so all along the way, there's strategic considerations and there's design considerations. And then ITIL basically says to developers, go off and use the software development lifecycle approach of your choice, and then come back. And so what ended up happening was the developers did. They found Scrum, right? They found Agile. And so right there and then, the disconnect, in my mind, occurs, right? Mm-hmm. Where ITIL and IT service management is perceived to be much more operational, and Agile and Scrum are perceived to be much more for developers. And unfortunately, the bridge between them has not really been a strong bridge. So I've always felt, and again, that's why I kind of like, can I answer? I've always kind of felt that in some ways we sent the developers off the island, right? We sent them away and said, okay, this works for everything, but now go find your own SDLC approach.
Right. By design, which is kind of the fascinating part. It was that way by design, because, you know, frameworks like ITIL said, look, there's other great methodologies out there. We're not going to try to reinvent that wheel. And like you said, Jayne, they, you know, so developers went out and found Scrum. I think the other thing that's fascinating is when you look at DevOps organization, you know, organizations that are really focused on DevOps, it takes them a while, but they actually kind of eventually come around to understanding, like, oh, we need IT service management. Like, the more mature they are, the more they start to understand that, because, you know, a kind of a typical life cycle for an organization adopting DevOps is you start looking at where are the real pain points in your service delivery life cycle. So you talk about things like provisioning environments and, you know, moving to continuous testing so that you don't have that handoff between the development and testing organizations and that lag as you wait for that feedback. But what, and I'm not, you know, not all organizations, but for some organizations, they still have a little bit of a gap in their planning processes. So they still perhaps have a pretty long cycle time from when they get a requirement to when they actually, you know, go through the process of analyzing that requirement, making a decision about whether or not they want to make that change or add that new service to their portfolio. So what, you know, ITIL kind of calls the service strategy part, that's maybe still a pretty long life cycle. And so, you know, you'll see DevOps organizations then come to understand that, all right, we've got to get serious about this feedback loop. We've got to shorten the cycle time for how we analyze and approve requirements. And so those are actually things that, you know, IT service management talks about. And so part of, you know, I think the challenge for ITSM practitioners is help, you know, everyone, you know, but certainly the dev community understand that IT service management is much more than just ops. It sits at a much higher level, and that there's a lot more than just software going on here that we have to think about. Customer experience is more than just, do they love the feature? It's how you interact with them as a customer, how you engage them and provide support to them when something goes wrong, right? And those are things that IT service management already understands and knows how to do. So you're right that it just kind of grew up that way with a focus on the ops side of the house. But if you really understand IT service management, it's much broader than that. And, you know, I use that word transformation at the very beginning. There's all kinds of transformations going on. It's not just DevOps transformations. Digital transformation is, you know, probably the most widely Googled concept right now. But there's also a little bit of a service management transformation going on right now, as organizations start to understand that, you know, we can drop the IT off the front of service management. You know, organizations are talking about IT or enterprise service management, right? And extending those service management practices beyond IT into HR, into the logistics part of their organization, and really into the greater organization in support of the digital transformation. So that idea of service management as a much, much broader concept is really kind of coming into its own today. In a lot of ways as a result of the digital transformation certainly DevOps was influenced by the digital transformation. So it's, you know, while this course is going to focus on IT service management specifically, we do certainly in the course talk about that service management transformation and how it's, you know, we need to think about service management beyond just IT, and to get back to the question, certainly beyond just ops. Manny?
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And maybe to round that off, you know, you mentioned earlier in the session that this course, ITSM for DevOps, pairs well with the majority of the DOI portfolio. But is there that one or two course that it really is maybe considered a must-have? Would you have some ideas on that?
Well, Donna, go ahead.
Well, hopefully we're gonna say pretty much the same thing. I mean, I think DevOps Foundation, you know, we're educators, right? It's what we do. So I do always feel like it's important for individuals to understand the what and the why of something like DevOps, and that's really what DevOps Foundation is designed to do. Courses like Certified Agile Service Manager, Certified Agile Process Owner are really designed to help you already pave the way for helping people think about things in an agile, from an agile mindset. From you know, those courses introduce that agile service management perspective. DevOps Leader certainly helps. You know, DevOps Leader introduces this notion of transformation, and it introduces concepts like transformational leadership. It absolutely is a tremendous course in terms of also helping with that mindset shift that individuals need to go through with DevOps. Jayne, what would you add? Agree, disagree?
Well, no, I agree with everything that you said. And I think it's just a great way to wrap up, to talk a little bit about the story behind the drill down courses. So one of the reasons we built the drill down courses is we know that a very, very large number of learners will take DevOps Foundation. And then as you move into the higher level certifications, you know, individuals and organizations sort of pick and choose which make more sense for what role or for what practitioner. But there's a very large population of learners who may only go to DevOps Foundation, and they're going to have a great experience being exposed to a wide variety of practices and approaches within DevOps. And then if they're not going to go further with the certification, it sort of implies that their learning journey stops. And we don't want that, right? We want to be able to enable learning as a lifestyle. We want to be able to enable the ability for organizations to learn together. And whether that's through a certification or whether that's through a course where you drill down into a topic together that's particularly meaningful to your organization, is important to us. You know, we pride ourselves on being the continuous learning community. You know, as I said, we really want learning to be a lifestyle. And so the availability and the accessibility of the drill down courses, ITSM for DevOps, and in particular value stream mapping for DevOps and all the future titles, is really meant to make it something where organizations can really encourage their practitioners to learn a topic, to understand how to engage those that are more involved in IT service management and those that are more involved in DevOps, and help them figure out a way to make the processes support the transformations, to be able to look at value stream mapping and spend time together building value stream maps. And again, some of the topics for next year, again, very hands-on, very practical. So while these certainly do partner very well with our portfolio of certifications, they are really meant to be accessible to everyone, whether a certification is something that's important to you or your organization, or understanding a particular practice, or how to align IT service management with Agile and Lean and DevOps is important to you as well. So if we get no message across today other than the idea of drilling down into how to, right, accelerate and modernize IT service management for your DevOps program, You know, that's really the message behind these drill down courses.
Excellent.
Yep.
Great answer. And I think that pretty much concludes our session for today. Great presentation, Donna and Jayne.
Thank you.
Excellent information.
Thank you.
And so this concludes the Ask the Author webinar. Stay tuned for future releases by visiting the DOI website frequently and by following DOI on Twitter and LinkedIn. Thanks again, everyone, for attending, and have a great day.